Moreover, Iranian policy has always been to avoid any direct confrontation with Israel or the US.
Yeah.
If you remember, for example, when Qasem Soleimani was assassinated in 2019, the main Iranian general, and Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, the head of the Hashd al-Sha'bi, which is the amalgamation of the pro-Iran militias in Iraq that later became part of the main armed forces, even when their top general was killed, it was essentially the US laying down the gauntlet, and Iran did not respond. They informed the US that a few missiles would go around Ain al-Assad base. The US withdrew their troops. The missiles went in. They made them, of course, a mistake of hitting a Ukrainian airliner as well, very humiliatingly for them. But Iran's policy is to avoid direct confrontation. Even the large missile attack that they did a few months ago on the Israelis, they informed the Americans beforehand it would happen. The drones were very slow. There was a lot of time for the Israelis to prepare how to take it out. Even if it exposed the limitations of Israel's ability to defend itself by itself, nevertheless, it did demonstrate that Iran has red lines when it comes to its engagement with the Israelis and with the Americans, insofar as it's willing to confront them.
I want to ask you about American public opinion, but we'll come to that in a second. Iran. Now, Iran has shown amazing restraint in inverted commas. Historically, when we've had conversations, you've said to me that, Iran, in a sense, acts out of weakness here because Iran just doesn't have the capability, and neither does it have the political maneuver, the room and economic circumstance where it can actually take on Israel at this moment in time. And so instead, what it does, it uses its proxies to maintain an image. But in essence, Iran is not interested in a war with Israel. I just want to understand how you see this. Is that are we seeing amazing restraint in a positive way? Or do you characterize that as weakness, as you have characterized the weakness of the cowardice maybe of the Arab rulers? How do you place Iran at this moment in time?
I think that if you put yourself in the position of an Iranian policymaker in Tehran, there are more important priorities in Israel at this moment in time. There is the priority of entrenching your militias in Iraq, because although your militias have been entrenched in the security forces, every now and then there are huge protests in Iraq, Iran barra barra, Iran get out, get out. And also you have this deadlock between the political parties. You have an issue with regards to the head of parliament. The position has been vacant for 9 months or 10 months or however long it's been now. Yeah. You have a lack of accord between your own Shia allies in the parties themselves, Nouri Maliki, Muqtada Sadr and all these others. You have a mess in Iraq that you want to focus in order to entrench, because every single crack in amongst your allies in Iraq allows the likes of the Kurds in the north, or allows the likes of the Americans or the Turks who are really pushing into northern Iraq itself, allows them to take advantage in order to weaken itself. Iraq is a priority. Yeah. Syria, it's not over yet. Bashar al-Assad, you're still wrestling with the Russian influence in Syria itself. You're wrestling with Bashar al-Assad himself, who, although he's happy that you supported him to stay in power, Assad believes himself to be an actual president, whereas you prefer him to be a proxy or indeed a puppet, someone who should show appreciation for the extensive efforts that Iran and Hezbollah and these Iranian militias went to in order to massacre the Syrian population, commit demographic changes, all in the name of rescuing your position and you staying in power itself. Syria is not secure either, because you have the Turks to the north, you have Idlib, which is still under the control of those rebel movements, and also you have the Russians that you're trying to negotiate and talk with. But every now and then there is talk about Assad, where the Russians and Turks almost want to talk between themselves and exclude the Iranians from any particular discussions. You have Yemen, where the Houthis, who was supposed to sign a contract with the Saudis in which the Saudis would recognize them, they scuppered that contract to go for a greater legitimacy by attacking the Israelis, trying to win over the Muslim population, Muslim sentiment, who had derided them for committing a coup, derided them for embarking on a seventh war. But now the Houthis have created a scenario where people are almost saying, okay, the Houthis did a coup. Yes, they're fighting a seventh war, but surely they are better than the internationally recognized government, which is allied with the Saudis and the UAE, who are seeking normalization with the Israelis. And therefore, there is a sort of apathy, at best sympathy, but at worst apathy towards what's happening in terms of Yemen itself. Iran believes these are priorities. Iran believes that it needs to cement itself in these areas first. Israel is a distraction. Israel is only sufficient insofar as a few rockets make the Muslim world clap, in that there is some sort of resistance. But you are focused more on Saudi Arabia. You're more focused on the Arab states. You're more focused on entrenching yourself, entrenching the Shia ideology in these areas where you find your support. Hadi al-Amari, for example, an Iraqi, once famously stated that if Iraq and Iran went to war, I would fight on the Iranian side against the Iraqis. Hassan Nasrallah, who once had the reputation of being a Salah ad-Din of the Muslim world after what happened in 2008 when he wreaked havoc on the Israelis, gave up all of that goodwill on the order of the Iranians, who asked him to cross over into Syria and break the back of the Free Syria army. The point here being is, it's not that Iran is showing immense restraint in that it's a positive or negative thing. For Iran, Israel is not the priority. The conquering the Sunni lands is the priority. Conquering Syria is the priority. Conquering Iraq is the priority. Establishing and entrenching your influence there is the priority. And we do not think about Israel until these aims are achieved. And that's why I think that when you look at what's happening with the Iranian policy, yes, they're showing restraint on the Israelis. They're showing no restraint in Iraq. They're showing no restraint in Syria. They're showing no restraint in Yemen. Syrians are still being displaced in Syria. Iraqis are still being killed and oppressed by the Hashd al-Sha'bi and by the pro-Iran militias. So there's no restraint on that particular front. And that's why for the Arab states that are watching the Israelis and the Iranians go at each other, and I'm not making any moral judgment on this whatsoever, I'm just analyzing the situation. When the Arab states in between see the Iranians and Israelis go at each other, they don't see it as somebody going in to rescue the Palestinians. They see that Allah يضرب الظالم بالظالم, Allah يضرب الظالمين بالظالم. Allah hits the tyrant with a tyrant. Allah hits an oppressor with oppressor. These are two oppressors who are hitting with each other, which is why we saw some reactions perhaps to what happened that perhaps, might be unseemly and the like, but I don't want to get involved too much into it.
Yeah.
But that's the point. It's not Iran is showing restraint as positive or negative. Iran's priorities are Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and then Saudi Arabia. And then the other Arab states before Israel comes into the priority list.
Well, I mean, I know you said you don't want to get into it, but I just want to raise the issue of how we view what's happened over the last few days. I mean, these are atrocities. The Israelis have committed acts of terror, and they've killed a broader population. They've killed children. They've maimed civilians, and that should be condemned. Yet there is a contingent, say on social media, but also in Syria, that have observed what Hezbollah has done over the last few years in Syria, and it's been atrocities after atrocities, and they praise it, as you said. One enemy is fighting another enemy, and so that should be a positive. How should we, this is not really political analysis now. I'm asking you to give me a world view. How should we view what the Israelis have done to Hezbollah over these last few days?
The Arabs say لكل حادث حديث. I think it comes from a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every event has its dynamics. Every event has its unique dynamics. The reality is what happened between Hezbollah and Israel has nothing really to do with Syria either. I think perhaps the lashing out by Syrians is more a reflection of the pain of many Syrians that they felt ignored by the Ummah for over 10 years. People don't talk about Syrians. They don't talk about the right of Syrians against Bashar al-Assad. These days, when you read narratives, the Syrians are almost told, you failed. Now you just have to accept realities. But the point that I want to say is that I think the lashing out is more a reflection of hurt at being ignored, a reflection of hurt that those who slaughtered them are being hailed as resistance heroes and the like. And that's why for me, I sort of settle with the analysis. Ask me why I think Netanyahu attacked Hezbollah, I give my opinion. Ask me why Hezbollah is not attacking Netanyahu, I give you my opinion. Ask me to make a moral judgment. I may be thinking Muslim is not the best to talk about this.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean the Syrians weren't entitled to topple Bashar al-Assad and that doesn't entitle Iran to come in all of a sudden and go and massacre the Syrian population because it wants Bashar al-Assad to be in power either. And that's why I think that Syria is a tragedy. Syria is a tragedy because it's a story that can't be told in black and white. It's a heartbreaking story of a people who want freedom but are denied by the entire international community. It's a story of a people who want to decide their own affairs, who want the ability to be free in their own country. But every single country on both sides of the spectrum, whether it's US and Iran, Whether it's Israel or Iran or Israel or Hezbollah, they all say you can't have it. Saudi, Qatar, you can't have it. Why? Because it's not on my terms.
To talk about the last few days, but just one last question on Syria. Yes, you're right in suggesting that the revolution was subverted by foreign powers, whether regional or United States, and that has cost the Syrians in a big way. But the counter argument from the Iranian side, and again it will be in the comment section, is that the Iranians were restrained and they didn't kill the population, and it wasn't, there wasn't a what you've suggested there is hyperbole. It's exaggerated. The Iranians believe in pan-Islamism. They believe in Muslim unity. What you suggested was helping the Palestinians. They're the ones who believe in something beyond what the corrupt Arab regimes believe in, which is their narrow nationalism. You seem to be evoking a picture of Iran as no different really to the self-interested states that litter the Muslim world. Am I right in making that suggestion?
Iran believes in a project. Iran has an idea it is committed to, and it believes wholeheartedly with conviction in this idea.
Right. Is it an Islamic project?
I'm very hesitant to delve into whether it's Islamic or not. I want to describe it as it is, and people can decide if it's Islamic or not.
Okay.
The Iranians believe in a conviction that means that it encourages the Houthis to fire missiles on the Israelis in defense of the Palestinian people. Hezbollah fires rockets at the Israelis knowing the cost of the like. The Iranians believe in a conviction of something they believe to be Islamic, that I think is rejected by the overwhelming majority of Muslims. Iran believes in a Shia supremacy that leads it to see its Sunni neighbors as justified, as legitimate targets, that leads it to see its Sunni neighbors as legitimate targets to be conquered, that sees its Sunni neighbors as having blood that is halal for the bullets that come out of their guns of the militias. Iran believes it is legitimate to slaughter Syrians, despite the fact they say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, in order to establish a Shia supremacy in Syria. They believe that the Hashd al-Sha'bi in Iraq can massacre in Diyala and in Anbar and other places in the name of Fatima and in the name of Al-Hussein and in the name of Ali ibn Abi Talib. They believe that they can hurl these banners and claim they are fighting Yazid. Their interpretation of Yazid is that Yazid is someone who went against the Prophet ﷺ and Ahl al-Bayt. And therefore, when they raise the banners of who they're fighting in Syria and Iraq, they say we are fighting Yazid. Who is the reference being made to when they say Yazid? Who are they applying it to? And that's why they believe their vision to be Islamic. And I've met, I'm a journalist. I've hosted Houthis before, senior leadership of the Houthis. They are convinced they are on haqq. They are convinced in their diehard support for the Palestinians. But the price they are willing to pay, or the price or the road that they see to Al-Aqsa, is paved with the corpses of Sunni Muslims. Which is why when people talk about Iran and they say Allah hits a tyrant with a tyrant, it's because Iran says, I'm coming to bring the glory of Islam. But when people see how many people have been killed by Iranian hands, it's overwhelmingly majority Muslim. You'll hardly find an Israeli. It's overwhelmingly Muslim. And that's why I don't want to use a meme to belittle the topic, but I think it summarizes quite well. When ISIS were in Iraq, people started to apply this to the Iranian militias. They showed a picture of ISIS, saying, with their guns, they're standing in Iraq. They say, we are in Iraq, but our eyes on Al-Aqsa. And so someone did a meme. They brought Adil Imam, a famous comedian in Egypt. And they said, Tab ya Jama'a, why don't you go to Al-Aqsa and leave your eyes on Iraq? Like rid Iraq of your evil, of what you're doing over there. And that's why I think those who believe in Shiism, I think that I understand their affinity for Iran. I understand that Islamic history is filled with tragedies that have been committed on both sides. But for me, I'm not referencing the history. For me, I'm talking about today. Iran claims it is fighting for the Palestinians. Iran is showing restraint on Israel. Why can't it show the same restraint in Syria and in Iraq and the like? And that's why many people, when they say, okay, but we are supporting Palestinians, the Palestinians are celebrating us. You had a Palestinian sitting here. You had Sheikh Omar Suleiman sitting here as well. And he put it bluntly, and he is in more of a position to say it than I am, in which he said, those who denied the freedom of the Syrians have no right to support the freedom of the Palestinians, or to claim that they are supporting the freedom of the Palestinians. And I recommend people to go watch that interview with you over there. That doesn't mean I don't believe that there can't be engagement or dialogue or the like. But I think to deny the crimes, I think is horrific. And I think if you want to understand the Syrian reaction to what happened, albeit I think it's unseemly, if you want to understand the Syrian reaction and why I haven't commented on it, why I didn't tweet on it or anything like that, even though I said a lot about it here, the reason why is, for me, what I saw in it was pain. Ya Ummah, where are you? Ya Ummah, why don't you care? Ya Ummah, why don't you pay attention? Ya Ummah, this person celebrated the slaughter of my relatives and my people. Why do you platform them? You people, these people, 13 years, they celebrated the slaughter of my people. Why do you celebrate them today? Why do you have short memories? Why do you care so much about this part of the Ummah, but you don't care about us? Why is our blood cheaper than the blood of what you're going to... Why are you so ignorant in terms of... And the thing is, when I hear it, I think, I appreciate it, because I apply it to Sudan as well. Sudan, more people... I'm not saying that comparing the causes. I'm saying you look at how many people killed in Sudan, how many people displaced in Sudan. No, we haven't had people start reading about it. Yeah. We haven't had people start talking. Al-Fashir in West Darfur is under heavy siege. If Hamiti takes it, he takes over the whole of Darfur. He can set up a whole government in the western part of Sudan and then paralyze Khartoum, and then they can split it, and then we have another disaster in which Sudan is split again. But no one's paying attention. Why? And I think this is what we see when we look at what happened in Syria, or even when we talk about Iran. It's that I understand that people are upset whenever Iran is criticized. They say this is time we need Muslim unity. But this discussion comes if Iran was, for example, to have killed the Syrians 10 years ago and is not killing them today. We're talking about events happening today. The killing is still happening. The oppression is still happening. The displacement is still happening. And that's why I think it's still extraordinary that when you see Syrians, even in the midst of their plight, wholeheartedly supporting the Palestinians, regardless of that. Having said that, and I finish on this point,